Hello and welcome to Cheat Codes Podcast by Women in Games International. I'm your host, Tosh, and with me today we have the elf of mental health, Darshan Hooker, and we're going to talk about gaming and mental health. Welcome, Darshan.
Hey, how's it going? What's up?
Oh, pretty good. Happy Mental Health May.
Yes, May is mental health, and I love it, especially as a mental health professional. So, hey, everybody, I am the elf of mental health.
Can you please introduce yourself and let listeners know a little bit more about who you are?
Yeah, sure. So I am the elf of mental health. My name is Darshan Hooker, and I am a licensed marriage and family therapist and adjunct professor here in Los Angeles, California. I run a private practice, and it's called NOLA Life Healing Center. And I've been merging my own creative passions for play and dress up and cosplay to help people connect to concepts about mental health that a lot of people struggle with, especially depending on the culture, age. So yeah, that's what I do. And that's how the elf of mental health was born, because I do love dressing up.
So you merge those two worlds, kind of like how I merge Carnival and Star Wars into Carnival Jedi.
Yes. So literally I was like, okay, what is a good representation of the fun, creative, playful side of me, and also what is the professional, right? And I don't really fit that standard anyway, but I was trying to figure out, how do I merge the two of these things? And although I love what I do, have more fun with it. And so I merged, those two worlds, and it's pretty fun because I get to dress up and also talk about things that are important.
In last month's episode, we talked to a professor from MIT. Her name is T.L. Taylor, and she talked about how the right to play is a fundamental right. And it's healthy and it's good for us to play. So I love that you integrate.
Yeah, it's so important. And a lot of times what growing up is eliminating play. And that's oftentimes why we struggle with mental health difficulties, because we don't have a balance between work and play.
That's very true. So you know that I love video games. I consider myself a gamer. Do you consider yourself a gamer? And if you do, or even if you don't, what's your favorite game of the moment?
I no longer consider myself a gamer because, I started back when, I want to say like Nintendo. And so I'm not too old where Atari wasn't my thing, but Nintendo, Sega, Super Nintendo, like all of those were my thing. Nintendo 64 is one of my favorite systems, and the Sega Genesis is my favorite system. So I used to game a lot. In my free time when I wasn't in theater. I was playing video games. But now not so much. I don't have as much time to game. I have a Switch and I like to play, and one of the games I do like to play, which is still based on old school games, is Legend of Zelda. So different Zelda games I like to play. Zelda's one of my favorite game sagas, and Resident Evil. Resident Evil is an all-time favorite. So I'll still play. Oh man, it was so fun. And I just remember like staying up super late at night trying to finish and being scared and the adrenaline of it all.
I remember how scared I was to play Resident Evil, and now I watch it now and I'm like, was I tripping? Because
first of all, the graphics, you're like, what was I actually scared of? It looks like a brown blob.
Yeah. Where you're playing in your friends in the room and you're like, do you hear a dog? I hear a dog.
Yeah.
It's a dog in it.
Yes, and it was so fun, it was just so fun to just put yourself in that space and just feel invigorated, like, I can accomplish this, I'm gonna beat all these out. And I have a mild obsession with the zombie apocalypse, so there's also that. So that was one of my favorites. So Zelda and Resident Evil gives you a kind of understanding about the two dichotomies in my personality.
It makes sense. It definitely makes sense.
Yeah. So that's one. If I would say now, a game that I play on my Switch is Zelda.
What do you think draws so many people into gaming, especially online gaming?
Gaming is fun. Gaming is also an escape from reality. Whether your reality is harsh or difficult, it's subjective, right? Everybody's life depends on them, their journey, their choices, right? Their environment. But you get an opportunity to really dive into a different world, especially when you have world building games, when you have games where you can create the characters, you can create the environment, these missions, right? So not only do you get to feel accomplished when you succeed, you win a mission, you win a fight. So there's this like this sense of competency, achievement that you may not always feel in the real world. Because let's be real, like life is whack. Like life is a lot. It's really a lot. Like I didn't sign up for this. I tell you all the time, I wish I was a cat, like, because I didn't sign up for this. You got between paying bills and interacting with other humans, navigating romantic relationships, friendships, family, like it's borderline overrated. And I won't even say borderline. So when you have an opportunity to find something where you can literally escape and just focus on that, that's one of the draws. And then online gaming, you get to meet so many people. It's a lot easier to connect and socialize when you already have something in common, something you're so excited about, like gaming. So you don't have to worry about like, so what's your favorite color? Right. You can ask, hey, what game are you playing right now? Or you're already playing the same game, right? So that's now true. You get to say, wow, what made you pick this weapon over that one? So you can connect to people. And a lot of times it's really hard to feel a sense of connection when you're an adult and you're trying to game. And even as a kid, right, developing these socialization skills, it takes work. Yeah. And if you already have something in common, you already, find connections. Because of that, it's a lot easier to feel like you belong, right? Those are just a couple of them. I mean, don't even get me started on how much dopamine fires off in your brain when you win. Like it's a slight high, right? Like when you win, when you accomplish something, you have this secretion of dopamine and you're like, whew, I feel on top of the world. I did that. Adrenaline pumps. It's, you get to focus on anything but what's going on in reality.
One thing about gaming that I like, because I play a lot of RPGs, so you're always building on the skills that you have acquired, and you see that progress, you see that leveling up. However, in the real world, you can be amazing at something and then not.
Right. Yeah. So, that's true. That's hard. Right? And there are things, and there are things that we struggle with, in the real world, the physical world, like imposter syndrome. You can be so talented, you can be so good at something. And then if you start to compare yourself to the people around you in the world, what success means to them versus what success feels like. Yeah, you could have the best skills and you could be the best teacher, you could be the best doctor. But then there's always this like, am I though? Yes. But in video gaming, you can see the progress. It's a lot easier because you can track it, right? There's a tracking system that happens. You press pause, you can see how many kills you have. You can see how you can see how many
accuracy rate.
Yeah, so you can that sense of competency, that sense of just control over your environment, over your own self is really, really underrated in terms of how people navigate in the physical world. We don't understand how much a need for control really impacts our mental health.
That is true. I know when I play a video game, when I get to level 53, I get this weapon that I wanted. And it's going to be mine because I have the credits, I have the skill level, it's going to be mine. But however, and there's no level.
No,
and I'm reaching in my real
trash, like trash and trashier in the real world sometimes. Right. And not to say that all of life is like that. But if we think about it, gaming is escape, right? There are all types of ways we escape. It could be a specific hobby like gaming. It could be dress up, for instance, like me, right? Dress up is one of my escapes. Or it could be just vegging out on your phone or watching cartoons because we're trying to live in a world that is not that of our own, right? At least for a minute, right? And so, you get to level 53 and you feel this success, you feel this accomplishment, and you know that no one can take that from you. That's also why it's absolutely devastating when somebody unplugs your console or the power goes out because, oh my God, I did all this hard work. Did I save? Did I meet the checkpoint? did I do that? So there is this sense of I did it.
That's true. That's very true.
It's powerful.
Very. Online gaming can also be a very toxic space at times, just like social media. Why do you think that is?
There's the idea of anonymity. There's power behind anonymity. When you don't feel that people know you, it's a lot easier to allow some of the intrusive thoughts you have about others, some biases you have that may be implicit in the real world. You allow them to be explicit online because you feel like there's 6 degrees of separation, right? There's more in gaming. there is, I don't know where you live, or, oh, you're all the way in another country. So there's a sense that you're untouchable. And that can foster a really toxic, unhealthy space, especially for a lot of classes that need to be protected, a lot of populations that are already marginalized or oppressed. And let's be honest, it can be abusive online, specifically for women online, for the queer community. It's difficult, right? For people of color, Blacks and otherwise, Black and brown folks struggle with gaming, right? Like the minute you make your Abby look like your skin color, right? Now you log in and people know that you are other. So there's also why online gaming can be negatively impactful on the mental health, because of the things you have to deal with that still come from the physical world, right?
Right. That is very true. When I first started gaming in online spaces, I would not have my microphone on, because as soon as they knew I was a female, especially a Black female, I'm an immediate target. It doesn't matter if we're on the same team. Yeah. It doesn't matter. And it was for no reason. Yeah. And it was disheartening, and it made my heart so sad.
Right. Your one escape, right? Where it's supposed to be this community and this sense of belonging and connection, because you have such a similar interest that you're passionate about. And then to have, that bubble, the metaphorical bubble, be burst by racism or by misogyny, or can really impact your mental health, to where you feel like, now this environment I created for myself to avoid those things in life has been infiltrated. Like I betrayed myself.
Definitely.
I assumed that I was safe by escaping in this world, right, that I got to build and create with other like-minded folks. And wow, we're not so like-minded. That's really heartbreaking.
Very. I'm a neurodivergent individual, and I get to talk to other people with different levels of neurodivergency. Mm-hmm. And a lot of things that we have in common are video games. And some people had asked me if I could talk about how it impacts mental health, because that they feel like gaming is something that helps them order their thoughts or kind of feel safe. For instance, when I write, I can't sit there and say, okay, I'm going to write. I can't do that, because now I'm thinking about writing. Yeah. and I'm not being creative. And I'm like, that's great. I need to write about writing. And I cannot process those thoughts, but I'll bring up pretty much like a mindless game on my phone, and I'll play that. And then when I'm playing that, I'm able to be creative and write and tell whatever story I'm trying to tell. Yeah. And I noticed that that's kind of a connection that I have with other people, to kind of like distract a different part of your brain so that you can be more creative. Yeah.
Neurodivergent folks, I tell folks there's neurotypical and neurodivergent. And really, like, what is neurotypical? Because we all learn in different ways. We all express in different ways. Some folks just have a name for it. But yeah, for neurodivergent folks, it's really easy in gaming to focus. One, because depending on the type of needs you have, where neurodivergency kind of functions one way for others, a different way for this person, we all have a similar understanding that we need something different in order to enjoy this, right? And it's easy to focus because there are things that are going on that are stimulating the brain all at the same time, right? You have multitasking, where you're able to do multiple things at one time. You're tracking your progress. You're trying to have forethought about what's the next step. So your problem solving, critical thinking skills are there, but it's the safety of this online environment that you've cultivated, right? That the gaming system has cultivated as well. And being able to focus sometimes can put folks in like a flow light state, where you're almost meditating because you're that intensely focused on what you're doing that it drowns out all the noise, right? If you are neurodivergent and you have something where you struggle with sensory overload, and we all have different sensory needs, right? But neurodivergent folks may have more than others. And so if sensory needs are an issue for you, where, sound, you're easily distracted by noise, or you have a lot of thoughts going to and from that you're not able to organize because executive functioning isn't doing its part to help you prioritize those thoughts, it's a lot easier because gaming provides an automatic structure for that. and there's no outside noise. And then think if you're putting on the headphones, right? You're buffering even more sound, right? From the outside world. So again, you've got your dopamine up, right? So that's that happy drug going off in your brain. You've drowned out all the noise that comes when you're just functioning in your own space in the physical world, whether that be intrusive thoughts, could be positive or negative intrusive thoughts about yourself, about neurodivergency, about just existing, right? There isn't that feeling of I don't fit in, which a lot of neurodivergent folks do feel. I don't fit in. It's hard to fit in. People don't understand me. It's too hard to be understood. It's hard to verbalize my thoughts. It's hard to process what other people are thinking and then absorb it and then decide what I want to say next. It's a lot of work.
It's a lot.
Yes. So here I am in a space where I don't have to do that. We can chat a little bit if we need to. I might say something here or there, but for the most part, we can connect to something that doesn't allow for the noise.
That is true. And one thing you reminded me of when you were speaking is that some of these games on the phone, like for instance, Candy Crush or something like that, it's stimming.
Yes. Yeah. Because you got a repetitive motion every time.
Yeah.
Right. I think about the old game like Quip, what is it called? Cubert? Yeah. And you just had to have him bounce on these little things or like Tetris. Yeah. Like Tetris. It's literally like just a repetitive motion of flipping a shape and moving it to where it needs to go. You got a couple of repetitive clicks, right? And so you get to do a mindless, repetitive motion that doesn't involve so much exhausting work for the brain, right? And so you get a chance to just be. And a lot of neurodivergent folks don't feel like they can just be.
It's exhausting sometimes. So it's
yes.
Not only do you have the emotional stimuli of everyone else's mess in the world, but you're also dealing with the world just being a very loud place.
Living is loud.
Yes.
Yes, it is. Even if you live in rural communities, you think about just existing, walking outside of the brightness of the sun. You've got, just the smells. You've got things that people don't really think about that do affect the brain and how we establish our goings and comings in the world.
Even the grocery stores play Mariah Carey, Greatest Hits. And you're like, why are we doing this today?
It's blasting in the speakers. And then you have so many colors, right, at the same time. And then what gets confusing for other people is like, well, in gaming, there are lots of colors. There's lots of noise, especially if you do first-person shooter games, right? You got a lot of noise going off, gunfire, drop the bomb. Hey, lots of screaming, right? But you get to intensely focus on your piece in that, right?
Very
you
true.
Get to focus on your journey in that. And it's a lot easier to drown out anything else that could be coming in that's not helpful to your mission. Because you got a goal.
Yes.
You got one goal. In the physical world, we got 50,000 goals. Go to the grocery store, do laundry, be nice to our friends, take care of our pets. Like there's a lot of goals all at once, trying to juggle it all. In gaming, you usually have one mission, right? And I can break it down.
I can adjust the input, so I can cut that down. But I can't.
Yes.
But if I'm in the grocery store and they're playing Mariah Carey's Greatest Hits and it's bright and it's a lot of people in there, now I can't find taco sauce.
Right. Yes. Because you can't turn down the volume. You can't adjust the stimulation. Right? You can change on your TV or on your computer monitor the brightness or the colors. You can change the resolution. You can change so much in the settings that you don't get to do in the real world.
That is true.
You don't get to block out, right, in the way you can with gaming.
That is very true. So when do you think, or when does gaming become unhealthy for some people?
We all have different capacities. I like to say it that way. We all have different capacities in terms of the amount of time we can focus on one task and also remember that we have other things we need to take care of holistically for our entire person, right?
Right.
But because everybody's capacity is different, some folks after 2 hours, right, that could become a dangerous line where 2 hours becomes 10 hours. For some people, they can game for 4 hours and they remember to press pause, to drink water, to get a snack, right? When you start to notice that there's anxiety about gaming. There's anxiety about real world relationships and connections. When you're recognizing that you haven't showered, or you've been sitting in the same place for over 5 to 8 hours, our bodies are not meant to be sedentary in that way. So if there's no physical movement or activity in the body, physical pain, right, becomes an issue. You have things like that. Your heart rate is not moving as quickly as it should because you're in the same space. So again, when you have anxiety about gaming, when your body is responding to the fact that you've been sitting in the same space for a long time, when your actual physical world relationships are suffering, right? When you're recognizing that maybe there's a loss of excitement about other things that you also used to do. Maybe you used to collect pops, but now you don't go anywhere and you don't go look for new cool pops at the local swap meet anymore or whatever. You know, when you're just focused on gaming, it's affecting your work relationships, right? When you're waking up and you're missing appointments for things. Those are some times where you need to say, hey, I think this is becoming more of an issue. And it's no longer escapism in a healthy coping mechanism. It's become a negative coping mechanism.
That makes sense. Yeah. When it starts to take over and that's all you're thinking about, all you want to get back to.
Yeah. So yes, that's a big thing. When you're in the physical world and all you can do, you can't wait to get back home to game, right? You should be able to disconnect from this hobby, this activity, this passion to be able to live in the physical world. But if the only thing you can do, you can't be present in the moment outside of gaming, and you're just thinking about, okay, the next mission, the next thing I need to do, right? The next weapon I need to get, how many more credits I need to gain, right? Then that's when you start to say, I think this is becoming an issue for me.
I've noticed that online especially, I see a lot of couples posting about how they don't agree when it comes to one couple gaming and one isn't. They have different ideas of what a healthy amount of gaming is. Yeah. Have you seen those situations?
Yes. I mean, you have to think about it because we're all different. So our connections to things are different. The way that maybe a husband likes gaming, maybe the wife likes makeup, right? So the amount of time spent in either of those may be equal, but in different times of the day, because a lot of times gamers may game late into the night, where maybe the wife is doing makeup in the daytime. So when she's done, it's the same amount of time spent. Right. But maybe that, is considering like, oh man, but it doesn't take away from the time with the relationship. And I think it's really important for folks to be honest about what they like, right? Honest about how much time they spend doing what they like, honest about the benefits from what they like with their partners really early on, so that folks can make a conscious choice, right? An intentional choice about whether or not that's the dynamic they can get themselves into. But then there's also, maybe you weren't a gamer at the beginning of the relationship and you found gaming as a way to escape from a difficult job, right? So now this becomes a new escape, a new coping mechanism. And so you're not going to just break up with your person because they found something that's helpful, right? But you need to have healthy conversations about, okay, what's the balance? The actual amount of time folks should have for any screen time is 4 or less hours, right? 4 hours or less. And so once you hit a 4-hour mark, that is typically when you're supposed to eat again, right? The body needs some food. Between that 4 hours, you should have been drinking plenty of water, right? So again, there's conversations that need to be had way before you decide to be in a relationship. And then once you're in that relationship, if gaming is introduced, okay, how can we make sure this is something you enjoy that doesn't add tension to the relationship? You can still find pleasure in it and also be present in the real world, right? Be present with the connection with your partner. And that's possible.
I remember speaking to someone, and she said that she would never, ever date anyone who games. She said it's an immediate deal breaker because it really demonstrates that whoever she's dating has like a lack of maturity and a lack of ways to process things in the outside world. And I immediately felt attacked. Immediately.
How dare you?
Right? But I just play it off because I'm fake. I'm like, oh, yeah. Sure. Yeah, I get it. Absolutely. Yeah.
So there's a balance, right? That is a yes and no. That person is correct and incorrect at the same time. Because it really depends on what level of gaming the person that this person's referring to has. There are levels to this shit, right? So if you're a casual gamer, you can still connect to incidents in the outside world, conflict resolution, problem solving. Typically, those are, things you still can do. It depends on how long you game and for, what amount. Is it causing any issues for you at what point? So yes, gaming, if it becomes when in the psych world, right, we talk about functional impairment. And so functional impairment are the different areas of our lives where we could probably be impaired if we think something is a problem. So in the work setting, in the community setting, right, daily living skills, right, things like that, social skills. So actually gaming for a lot of folks does help them improve social interactions. It does help reduce anxiety and depression. It does help foster a sense of, accomplishment and achievement. So confidence is boosted, ego is boosted, right? It is when you cross that line to functional impairment where you're no longer able to take care of yourself daily. You're not meeting, your body's needs, your mental health needs. Then it becomes, yes, you can begin to struggle and find yourself in a place where you get social anxiety being outside of gaming, where you do feel like your depression and anxiety symptoms are increasing because now you don't have as much control. Right? In the gaming world, you have more control. And when you cross that line to functional impairment, it can become a difficult thing to manage.
That is true. If I have a list and I have a pen and a pad and I came to you and I said, I need some concrete tips to game in a healthy way, what would you tell me?
Set timers. So that's my first thing. Set a timer to make sure that you are not going over a certain hour of time to game consistently. You also need to set alarms for breaks, to take a break and get water, to get a snack, stretch your body, move around a bit, right? That's the first piece. The second piece is you typically don't want to game in your bedroom. You will not leave the room. You need to game in a place where if you look around, you recognize like, oh, the bathroom's over there. Oh, the kitchen's over there. It can take you out of the gaming world for just a split second to remind you, I need to get up and get some water. I need to get up and get some food. So alarms, timers are very, very helpful to make sure that you're not exceeding a healthy amount of time with the screen.
Those are great tips. Those are tips that I need to do myself.
Yeah. I mean, and if you think about it, stuff like that is not just for gaming. We got folks who are now in the world where we work from home. And we don't have a good balance between when do I take my lunch break if I'm already at home and I'm able to snack whenever I want. But your body can't sit consecutively for that long of a period without developing some difficult aches and pains, right? So yeah, even for little ones, get them up, get them moving. You also need to make sure you get some sunlight. So if you're in a bedroom,
yes.
Yeah, if you're in a bedroom, the likelihood that you will leave and get some sun is very, 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 very slim. So try to set breaks to take a quick walk, to get some sunlight, to make sure you're, getting your fruits and veggies in, getting some water. Otherwise, you'll have other negative, impacts on the body that you don't want.
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. Mm-hmm. I just want to take a moment to thank you for speaking to us about mental health and gaming, because I think it's a thing that we don't take into consideration as much as we should.
Yeah.
And I appreciate you really making the time to carve that out for May, Mental Health May.
Problem. Yeah, no problem. I think it's really important because, again, everyone likes to bash the gaming community because it's not as understood. There are a lot of assumptions that are made, and there's a lot of research that shows those assumptions are not true. And then the gaming community, because it's so loved and revered, right, have a hard time sometimes focusing on the potential negative impacts. And so it's a good place to make sure we have balance, and we're talking about all of those things.
Thank you. If anyone's looking you up, where can they find you on the social medias?
They can find me in the social media world on IG. I'm on Instagram at Your Faith Therapist. That's URFAV Therapist. They can find me also on Facebook, facebook.com, Darshan Hooker, LMFT. You can also do my link tree, The Elf of Mental Health, and that'll pull you to everything. So my link tree will get you where you need to go.
Thank you so much.
No problem.
So hello, with me today, I have Samantha Blackman, Associate Professor at Purdue University, and we're here to talk about motherhood and gaming in honor of Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day, Samantha.
Thank you. You as well.
Thank you. Can you please tell us a little bit about yourself?
Like you say, I'm an associate professor at Purdue. I always, whenever people ask me to do an intro, I always say, oh God, that's always the worst. But I always say I'm a gamer, a researcher, games researcher in that order. It's weird because that's kind of the order that I came to it all in. But I am a games researcher. I'm really interested in diversity in and around the games industry, representation in games, as well as the presence of diverse bodies in the games industry. I am the founder and the host of the Not Your Mama's Gamer podcast and blog for many, many years. And I've been getting the itch to kind of reinvigorate the blog again. We'll see. And I'm also a content creator, and I create content both for fun, because I always say I'm a gamer first, but also because it's a part of my research agenda. Looking at content creators and representation is part of the work that I started doing right before the pandemic, and that was the worst time to do it because pandemic.
Thank you so much. So it's that's a lot to research. Does it ever get disheartening at times, or does the part that would probably dishearten most people, what motivates you to keep moving forward?
Good question. Both and is the answer. Yes. It is a lot. It gets hard, but it gets hard as a member of the community too. Right. So start to think about what the good that my work can hopefully do in the world, right? Not only in the academy, but also in the games community. And I think about my own kiddo who's a gamer, and I want to make sure that gaming is a safer, better space for her as well. So it kind of keeps me moving.
I like that answer. That's a good answer. So what has been the best part of this year for you, big or small, last 12 months?
So the best thing for me in the last 12 months, I don't know if it's because time's weird because of the pandemic. So I don't know if it's 12 months or 24 months, but just trying to make the best of the pandemic and the need to social distance and not spend as much time out and about in the world, spending more time just like with my kid and doing things together as she gets older, right? Before she's old enough to not want to do anything else with me ever again. But, to take the time to, while we're working together, like at home, to work through things, talk through things, for her to get a better understanding of why I do what I do, and for me to hopefully get a better understanding of why she does what she does. So just to see her like start to grow into a young adult and be able to experience that more closely than I would have been if we had not been in a pandemic. Does that make sense?
That makes perfect sense. Yes. Because you can't run away.
Exactly.
You're stuck right there.
You're stuck with me.
I remember my kids, when everything first shut down and they were I think we were all in the living room and everybody was on their devices and I was just staring at them. And at the same time, they all looked at me and they said, "Why are you staring at us?" I said, I don't know. They said, "No, you're doing like a weird smile thing." I said, maybe I'm appreciating you. It's something weird's happening internally. I don't know how to identify it yet.
Yeah, I get it.
It is cool. It's I see how it's hard for some people, but also there's so many other things that positive things that we can actually take away from it too. Mm-hmm. Hopefully things that we can lean into a little bit more as we ease out of it, hopefully.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that easing out of it part.
Yes. Yeah. What's something that if people who know you best saw randomly out in public, they would instantly think of you?
So let's see. The easy answer would be something game related, like something Final Fantasy 14 related, because that's been my pandemic game. But If we don't take the easy answer, I like lots of craft, but I'm a huge knitter. So I always have like a knitting project near me, like literally always near me. If it's not in my bag, it's on my desk, because outside of my immediate circle of knitting friends, not many of my friends knit. So if they were to see something knitting related, like yarn or needles or something, they would be like, "Oh, Sam." Yeah. So yeah, outside of my circle of knitting friends, I would probably say something knitting or crafting related, because I do a lot of crafts. I knit. I don't crochet. I do cross stitch, all kinds of fun crafty things.
That's goals for me, because I can knit triangles of all sizes. I'm not too good of keeping track of where to start and stop, so everything just every time everything is a triangle. Doesn't matter what my intention is, and I've decided that's fine. I knit triangles. That's my level of expertise. That's
there you go. I mean, you can make knitted bandanas. There you go.
I could, or I can knit mini triangles and just put them all together into some weirdly shaped quilt. I can do that.
You go. Yeah, that works.
But that's, you're a gamer. You knit. That means you have amazing dexterity. So, and your brain is sharp. So those are two things that are exemplified by the things that you like to do. So that's awesome. So I'd love to talk about Not Your Mama's Gamer. Mm-hmm. What inspired you to create that?
So funny story is that when podcasts were first becoming a big thing, or just a thing, they weren't even really big yet. I started listening to podcasts because I was playing a lot of World of Warcraft. In fact, not so much, because my kid had been born, so I had started to cut back on raiding and stuff. But I had been listening to a lot of World of Warcraft podcasts for a couple of years at that point that Not Your Mama's Gamer first got conceptualized. And then I started looking for specifically feminist voices talking about games on podcasts. And there were lots of men who were not necessarily not feminist, but were not distinctly feminist, right? And even with the few women that I did find in podcasting space, they were holding on to a lot of the same kind of status quo, shall we say, that we know in gaming circles. So I had a graduate student that I was working with at the time, and we were talking about podcasts, and I was kind of bemoaning the absence of a feminist podcast presence in the space. And I had done so weekly, because I meet with grad students weekly when they're dissertating, and kind of chat. And she said, "Well, why don't you start one?" To call my bluff. So finally, I called her bluff back, and I said, "I will if you do it with me." And I thought that was going to be the end of it. And she looked at me, she went, and then went, "Okay, sure." So we spent the next 6 months or so kind of planning out what this thing was going to look like. And then we launched it in the following January. And that was almost 11 and a half years ago now.
Wow.
And she moved on a while back because, she graduated and got a tenure track job, and tenure track jobs are stressful. And she, of course, didn't have a lot of time for extra projects. And then she started having children of her own. And yeah, being a mom's hard.
Yes.
But I'm still here 11 and a half years later doing the podcast on a regular.
That's awesome. And I like that. Well, you said that motherhood is hard. And I feel like most people believe that motherhood and gaming, those are polar opposite things, that they can't happen at all. Why do you think that's the view of mothers? It's
the gendered nature of labor, right? And it's the gendered nature of play, right? So interestingly enough, because motherhood is traditionally kind of the realm of people who get read as being female, and play is something that looks different according to the ways that your body is coded, right? So while people who are coded as male, they're supposed to play. They're supposed to play, even when we think about parenting, right? You're supposed to play baseball with your kid. You're supposed to play football with your kid. You're supposed to do all these things. So play is the realm of men if you're an adult. If you are playing as a woman, then maybe if you're playing traditionally feminine games with a female child or a child read as female, it's okay. But video games have always been the realm of men in many people's eyes. So it's bad enough when girls play games, and I'm talking about younger folks. But when you're talking about grown women, especially grown women with children, that's a whole nother story. And I think that's probably a big reason, is that, you know, even in the stories that we've seen created around games, with games advertising and games lore, all kinds of stuff, is that if you see an adult and a child playing games together, the parent is usually the father.
Yes, that's very true.
Yeah.
And one thing that I love about gaming is that it gives me an opportunity to bond in a different way. That's the way we come together and we argue, but argue in a way where we are laughing to tears. And that's like a different kind of energy that I don't really think we would have anywhere else. When people find out that I game with my kids, they feel like it's a childish thing for me to do. And I feel like it's the most parenting thing that I get to do. And it's not anything I have to, something I choose to do. Mm-hmm. And also it's really fun when my son logs on and he goes, "Hey guys, my mom's in here." So, and I'm in this party, and it's always one friend that's like, "Oh, your mom's here," and it's always another friend that goes, "I wish my mom was here." So it's very interesting to see how that plays out. And I don't usually say anything because I really like listening to how they communicate because it's hilarious to me. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. But it's so much fun, and I think a lot of people want to play, but they don't feel like it's their place to play. I think that if more people viewed play as a right for everyone, then I think we would be a lot happier in life.
Absolutely. I mean, and it's pretty funny because I play with my kid. We play games together. We always played games together. But my mom didn't play games when I was growing up. So she and I never played games together. And then, but my kiddo started gaming very early. It was unintentional. I walked away. She picked it up and it was over with. But she had her own DS. She had her own DS by the time she was 2, because I don't know if anybody remembers, but they had like learning games for the DS. So there was like learn your colors, learn the alphabet, right? So there were these Sesame Street learning games, and she had this kind of giant stylus that was great for her kind of digital dexterity. And so she like loved that thing. And probably by the time she was 4 or 5, my mom would like always come. Well, my mom would come visit several times a year, but always like stay almost the entire summer because my kid's birthday's in the summer. And she was like on her DS all the time. And finally we were at Target one day and my mom was like, "I think I'm going to get one of those DS things so that P and I can play together." And I was like shocked. So we grabbed her a DS and a copy of Style Savvy, right? Because that was the thing that, even though it wasn't co-op, it was the thing that my mom, like that P was playing, that my mom was like most interested in. So they would sit together and become fashion moguls. And I have tons of pictures of them, like when that first started, like when P was a tiny and her and my mom are like sitting on the sofa, or they'll be sitting on a bed somewhere, just huddled together, showing each other their stores and like their interactions with customers and all this other stuff. So it's always pretty funny when I tell that story to people. I was like, yeah, my mom started gaming in her 70s so that she could play with my kiddo. I was like, but she never played with me. I'm not bitter. No, I'm not. I truly am not. But it's kind of funny, right? How people come to games and at like what stage in their lives.
It is funny.
Yeah.
It's my mom is horrible at gaming, and she has no idea, no clue that she's horrible at it, and that's the best part of it all. She especially if it's split screen, she never knows which screen it is. She's always my screen, and she's like, oh, I was like, what are you doing? She's like, I'm really getting them. No, you're in a corner. You are in a corner, Mom.
You got face planted in the corner.
You are in a corner. You are meleeing a wall at the moment, Mom. That's what you're doing. Okay. Just never mind. It's you. I promise it's you, Mom. You just good job. Yeah. That's like my kid when we first started playing Lego games together, because she would actually get scared, right? Because she was little, and if there were too many baddies like on the screen, she would find that one. She had just like the perfect ability to find the one pixel on the screen no one can reach her, and she would go to that pixel and she would stand there and be perfectly safe. And I'm like, "What are you doing?" She's like, "I'll come out when you're done killing them all." She said, "I know my strengths. I know what I can do. And call me. I can find things and help you solve puzzles. I cannot fight these things." Yep. I love it. My youngest, she's 8 now, but she wanted to. She started reading when she was 2, and the reason why she wanted to read is so she could play Roblox. So we would practice. So she had her little iPad, and we would practice like texting each other, and we worked on reading. And then she was so excited that she could play Roblox, and all she wanted to do was say hi, and then whatever. I think her name was like Lily or something in the game, because I said you can't tell people your real name. You have to say, and the only thing you could say is hi. I didn't want her to really engage in conversation with people, but she wanted to talk. So she would say, "Hi, my name is Lil Lily," and that was her first sentence. She was so excited, but that was an incentive for her and an objective to read, to play Roblox, and mostly with her brother and sister. But I thought, okay, maybe I shouldn't tell people that, because people were very judgmental about, especially kids playing games. And my thought is, well, this is the world we live in. And part of living in this world is understanding that we have a connection with technology. Yes. And the better people are at manipulating and learning technology, the more that they can be creative using it, because that's the world we live in. So it was a big source of mom guilt for me. Okay, so let me tell you a mom guilt story. I felt, because like I said, my kiddo started playing she started playing on the DS when she was 16 months old. That's how it started. We were like in the game room, and I left my DS. I had been playing Scribblenauts. I left my DS on the sofa while I went to run to the bathroom. I came back, and I have a picture of it because I snapped a picture. It was the cutest thing ever. She had stood up at the side of the sofa, and she was using the chair part of the sofa as like a little desk, because that's how short she was. And opened it up. She had a stylus in her hand, and she was leading the little character across the screen with the stylus. She knew exactly what to do just from watching. And I was like, oh. And then after she started doing that, she wanted to sit in my lap and help me play games all the time. And I was like, no, you're going to need your own, because we really are not. And we went through this period when I was playing Pokemon that she would only let me use Magikarp, which meant I lost every single time. So I was like, no, you're gonna need your own. We have some fundamental disagreements here. Exactly, because Magikarp was not gonna get me through that game. So I think it was like for her second birthday, I got her own DS and the chunky stylus and some Sesame Street games. But I was feeling guilty about letting her play like an actual console. So I went out and bought one of those like super expensive kid consoles that are handheld with a bunch of games. She hated it. Yeah. They don't like that. Hated it. She would try the games, and then she would be like, this isn't fun. And she was absolutely right. So, I mean, but there's so many things that people don't understand, because another thing is, like, in my past life, I always say in my past life, but it was actually in this one, I was also an elementary school teacher. So, like, games in education and games in cognition are things that have always been super interesting to me. And one thing that folks have not understood about edutainment games for a long time is that edutainment games are usually, one, neither
educational nor two entertaining. So if
That's true. It's not fun.
It's not. And if it's not fun, they're not going to play. If they're not going to play, they're not going to learn whatever it is you want them to learn from that anyway. And there are so many things that kids can learn just from playing kind of regular old AAA titles, indie titles, or just kind of just the titles that are meant solely for quote unquote entertainment. Like your daughter wanted to learn to read so that she could play Roblox. For my daughter, her first I'm talking to people game was Club Penguin, and she knew how to read it well enough to play Club Penguin, and she wanted to talk to people. And this is when she learned the importance of spelling, because she tried to log in one day and she found out she had been banned.
Oh no.
So I had to go through and find out why she had been banned. And then I had to call customer support. So she was spelling phonetically, and apparently whatever she had spelled was against TOS.
Oh no.
So I had to explain to them. I was like, well, she's really young. Here's what it is. And then I talked to the customer support person, and we had a good laugh about it, and they reinstated her account. So she learned the importance of spelling well. So that she didn't get banned from Club Penguin. Yeah.
Oh. It is incentive. It is. Yeah.
Yeah.
She wanted the little one. It was a game where you just put on outfits and then you do like a fashion show, and then you could do dance. And I'm watching this, and I'm thinking, I don't relate to this at all. This is a whole other thing for me. But she was very passionate about winning these things. And I just said, okay, if she's interested in it, let me find something that I could be interested in. And she'll say, well, I'll make a character for you, and she'll wear all black. All right, now you got me. I got it. Now I'm in. She wearing all black. That's my kind of character, yes.
Exactly. Yep.
So I was going through your website, and I saw that you speak about feminist game studies. What does that mean? And how does that benefit everyone?
So feminist game studies is oftentimes not what people think like at first blush, right? So it's doing game studies and looking at game studies through a feminist lens, right? So for me specifically, thinking about things like what it is to build community, what it is to kind of exist in this space with a body that is coded in very specific ways, right? And so we think about things like games and gender, games and sexuality, games and sexual orientation. We think about like all of the different ways that our bodies are gendered and the intersections at which we exist in the real world, and how it becomes even more intersectional when we think about how we exist in virtual spaces and in the games industry, especially when we have an industry that has been male dominated for all of its existence. So thinking about how all of these things come together, and then also thinking about how we do research, right? Because quote unquote traditional research is always, is often thought of as being research in which the researcher is like being a quote unquote objective, which I think is impossible. Objectivity is impossible. You cannot separate yourself from anything that you do. But thinking about how we research in communities and how we give back to the communities that we research, so that it is not a one-sided let me take from you and not give anything back. And it is also not a let me pose my big white knowledge onto your black and brown communities in very specific ways, right? So the feminist game studies for me takes all of these things into account and gives us something that is much richer. And that is why, like, Now Your Mama's Gamer, for like all intents and purposes, gets read as being academic, but it's, for me, it is something bigger, right? So we look to bring together voices from all around the games community, not just games academics, but also games journalists and content creators and gamers, right? So that we get a fuller picture of what the community looks like, a fuller picture of what the industry looks like, right? Because we're bringing together all of the voices rather than kind of viewing those voices through an academic lens, which is what I never want to do. I always tell people I'm an anti-academic. Yeah, so that's kind of what feminist game studies is for me.
And it seems like there is a heavy focus on community, which I think is often neglected and omitted in conversations with gaming. People seem to not understand that there is a community aspect to gaming. And representation in those communities are very important. You need to see yourself.
Yeah.
So what's the best part of gaming community?
Oh, that's a good question. The best part, I mean, the obvious answer would be to be in community, right?
Right.
But I think, and to be in community and just be a part of a game community are two different things for me. And I struggle to get people to understand that sometimes, right? Because to be in community for me is to be a part of a community in a way that you not only are there to like do whatever it is you do, but you're also there to help others in the community. Right. So it becomes more, and I hate to use this word, but it becomes a more organic thing, and it becomes more of a kind of symbiosis rather than a parasitic relationship. Right. Which is what can happen in a lot of cases, like people come into community and they take whatever they need to take and they move on. It's the same with when you're thinking about research, right? So as a researcher, I also want to be in community, right? And to give back in whatever way that I can. I want to be able to use, the resources that I have at hand to help the community become a stronger, better thing. Does that answer your question?
Yes, definitely. Okay. Because you mentioned community, and it's not something that exists in another room. It's something that is an extension of who we are. So it requires active participation. So that makes perfect sense. So what's up next for you? How can people find you in social media or in the podcast realm?
Okay, so that's pretty easy to kind of rattle off. So the podcast is just about anywhere you can think of to find podcasts. Because after 11 years, I've try to make sure it's absolutely everywhere. But you can always go to nymgamer.com, which is our site, right? So all of the episodes are there, all 200 and I always get the number wrong, and the folks that I have on the co-host with me always laugh at me. I think it's 239. I don't know, somewhere in there, almost 250. So the whole almost 250 episodes are there. And if you are so inclined, you can go back and listen to all of them. But I am also on most social media platforms. I'm on Twitter, both as my academic presence, which is Safista, SAFFISTA. And for my content creator kind of persona, which is NYMG_Safista. I'm on like TikTok as Safista. I'm on Instagram. My personal Instagram is private because kiddo pictures. But yeah, I am on just about everything. And I'm on Twitch. I also stream because like I said, I'm a content creator. So I stream on Twitch 3 days a week. And I'm just Safista on Twitch.
I love it. Thank you so much for appearing today. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule. I know grades are due. It's a lot going on. So thank you from the bottom of my heart for being on this podcast with me.
Thank you for inviting me. This was a blast.
Thank you. This is Tosh with Cheat Codes by Women in Games International. You can find us across many platforms at GetWIGI, GETWIGI, and you can also subscribe to our newsletter there. You can follow, and subscribe to this podcast on Spotify, but also anywhere you could find podcasts. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next month.